Great, so it's 11 a.m. So welcome all to our webinar, Understanding Regulation EU 2022-1616 on recycled plastic for food contact. This understanding of this regulation will be explained by our speaker, Alexandra Pereira from Plastic Recyclers Europe. She will be in charge of giving the whole session by explaining us these regulations and the challenges and also the difficulties and the opportunities that we can have when talking about this regulation. Just a few considerations before giving the floor to Alexandra. The webinar is being recorded, so in case that you want to watch the record and the webinar again in the future, it will be available on the STOPP website. Also, we want to make this session as much as interactive as possible. So if at the end of the project you can enter your questions or any curiosity that you may have in the chat, feel free to use it. I will be encouraging you also through the chat to ask questions to Alexandra. And again, we will let you know when the recording is available, and in case that you want the slides, it can be also attached in the Stop website in case you need it. Having said that, I don't have any other words. I would like to welcome our speaker, Alexandra Pereira. I give you the floor, so if you can introduce yourself and start the webinar, it will be an honor for us to listen to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the introduction and good morning, everyone. I'm Alexandra Pereira. I'm a regulatory project manager at Plastics Recyclers Europe. And today we will be diving into the regulation, a little bit what are the requirements. So looking forward also to the discussion. Feel free to ask questions as said. I would also like to quickly introduce Plastics Recyclers Europe in case you're not familiar. So we are the voice of European plastics recyclers. So we are a network of more than 200 members. So this can be recyclers, machine manufacturers, anyone in the value chain. And we have more than 25 years of experience in EU representation. So our role is to really make sure that the industry is mentioned at policy level as well. Today, I will be focusing on the regulation 22/1616. So we'll start with the structure of the regulation. Then we'll dive into requirements. So first regarding collection, sorting, and pre-processing. Then novel technology requirements, traceability requirements, and also at the end, leave some room to talk about current challenges and opportunities. So starting with the structure of the regulation, it's important to understand the three layers of food contact legislation before we start. So first, we have the framework, which is the Regulation 1935/2004. This is the regulation that sets requirements for all materials intended to come into contact with foods. Then we have Regulation 10/2011, which refers to plastics. And then if we go even deeper in a third layer, we have Regulation 2022/1616, which refers to recycled plastics. So this is the one that we'll dive deeper into today. So within this regulation, this covers all recycling process. So it ranges from functional barrier, chemical recycling, dissolution recycling, mechanical recycling, and also closed loop recycling, so all of them. And it also includes all types of polymers, not only PET, which is what was done in the past before this regulation, and also includes all types of waste. So pre-consumer and post-consumer are both included within this regulation. So this regulation also sits at the interface of waste and product legislation. Why? Because the waste composition influences greatly the quality of the recyclers at the end of the process, which are the product. So this regulation also aims to make sure that we limit the incidental contamination from the beginning of the value chain to ensure that we have an easier decontamination process that produces the recycled plastic. So if you are not familiar with the concept of decontamination, let's go through the definitions within this regulation. So we see that we start with the waste stream of a certain type. This waste stream was collected and then it is pre-processed. Pre-processing means operations such as grinding, washing, drying, all of this. Then you end up with a plastic input which will undergo a decontamination process. So this is included within a recycling technology, which will decontaminate the plastic input into a recycled plastic that is suitable for food contact. Then this recycled plastic can be further post-processed to have to produce recycled plastic materials and articles. I'm explaining this because some regulations have different definitions and sometimes they can even be contradicting each other. So it's important to keep this in mind throughout the webinar. Now, if we dive deeper into recycling technology, so you see that the recycling technology included a plastic input that goes through the contamination process and ends up with a recycled plastic. Within this, we have suitable technologies and novel technologies. Suitable technologies are processes where sufficient data has been generated in the past to consider them suitable. So right now we have two that are considered suitable in this regulation, which is post-consumer mechanical PET recycling and recycling from product loops. Then we also have novel technologies, which are all the other recycling processes where we need further data to assess the safety and the characterization of the technology. I will start by diving deep into the suitable technology part, but then we'll focus on novel technologies as well. The suitable technologies have requirements that are set in Annex 1 of the regulation. So you see a lot of descriptions. You don't need to memorize everything, but just keep in mind that basically this table sets specific requirements that the suitable technologies need to fulfill to be able to operate. Particularly if we look at the column, so you see that there are specifications of plastic input for both suitable technologies, also for output, which will be the recycled plastic. But you can also see that for post-consumer mechanical PET recycling, which is the first row, there's also a column in column 7. It means that they are subject to the authorization of individual processes. So what does this mean? It means that every process that has specific critical parameters needs to go through an individual authorization process. So basically, the applicant will submit a technical dossier to the local competent authority, which will in turn send it to the European Food Safety Agency, and they will publish an opinion on the safety of the process within 6 months and up to a year. Afterwards, then the individual authorization can be granted and the operation can begin. Important to keep in mind, if you are, for example, a machine manufacturer and you have a specific process that is the same for whichever recyclers you're providing this decontamination process to, then you can sub-license this authorization. The recycler does not need to go through it again. Now, regarding the novel technologies, so the process here is more extensive because you also need to generate data to demonstrate the safety of the novel technology first. So this is usually 2 years of data generation where you assess and characterize the safety and characterize the technology. And afterwards, it can go a bit of a ping pong between Commission and EFSA and the local competent authority until your technology can be considered a suitable technology and be included in Annex 1. This can be extended because, for example, they need further information from your side if you are applying for a novel technology. So then, indeed, this process can be up to 7 years instead of just 2. So that's a bit of a nutshell on the suitable and novel technology. But first, let's go to upper in the recycling process to focus on the collection, sorting, and pre-processing requirements, which are quite important for both. So the requirements are mostly set in Article 6. which basically sets requirements in terms of the origin of the plastic waste, the collection, and also the control. So you see that the plastic waste needs to originate from municipal waste or from food retail or other food businesses. And plastic waste must originate from materials and articles manufactured in line with Regulation 10/2011, which is the one that refers to plastics, and 22/1616, which refers to recycled plastics. The plastic waste must also be subjected to separate collection and shall be controlled through collection and pre-processing by means of quality assurance systems. So I will focus a little bit on the last two because these are quite important requirements to understand. So what does mean separate collection? So separate collected material is accepted for suitable technology. It means that material coming from the residual fraction and post-sorted cannot be used for a suitable technology. So think of hand-picked material from landfills, street collection, ocean litter, all of these. However, an important point is if you are applying a novel technology where the plastic waste is not separately collected, then you can deviate from this requirement, but you need to go through this process I explained earlier to prove that it still leads to a safe recycled plastic. Then the last part about the quality assurance systems. Why is it necessary for the sorting center and the preprocessor to be certified with a certification covering the requirements of this article? Because we need to have the transfer of the information throughout the value chain to ensure traceability. So it means that actors that are involved in the post-processing activity, so the later part, should be aware of the origin of the material and how it has been collected. Now that we covered the upper part of the chain, let's go deeper into the novel technology requirements. So the novel technology process is described in Chapter 4 of the regulation. It's an extensive procedure starting 6 months prior to the start of the decontamination technology. And the application can be done by any party that is involved in the novel technology development. So it can be a recycler, a machine manufacturer, a converter. So it's just important that the parties involved in the development, they decide who is going to act as the developer. So here you will see a checklist and also a timeline of this process. It looks like a lot of things are in this slide, so we'll go through them slowly, and as usual in the next slides, we'll go deeper into each requirement. So as I mentioned, the process starts 6 months before the start of operation and production, where the authorities are notified of your novel technology, and you publish also a notification report which contains the safety assessment and characterization of the technology. Afterwards, you'll have some administrative requirements. So it means that you will need to register as a recycler, the contamination installations, and as a recycler, you also need to complete declaration of compliance per batch of recycled plastic and do proper labeling of the containers of the recycled plastic. After 1 month, you'll need to submit a compliance monitoring summary sheet. And all these points I just mentioned that are not in bold, those also apply for a suitable technology. So the ones that are in bold are requirements that apply only to a novel technology. So the administrative requirements that are not in bold, I will explain later in the presentation, but for now, let's continue with the ones in bold, where it mentions keeping supplementary information available at the installation. So this is basically information that is related, again, to characterizing the novel technology and do the safety assessment to ensure that when your installation is audited, you have all the information needed. Afterwards, every 6 months, you will need to send a data from monitoring. So it's a monitoring report. There's a minimum of 4 that need to be submitted. And this is related to the 2 years of data generation that I mentioned previously. The monitoring contains data on contaminants from the plastic input and recycled plastic. And the laboratories that are performing this monitoring, they have taken part in proficiency tests to make sure they are have adequate methodology. So let's dive deeper into the notification and monitoring reports. So these are the reports. So the notification, the one that is 6 months before the start, and the monitoring reports that are sent every 6 months. So basically, they demonstrate the ability of the recycling process to sufficiently decontaminate the plastic input to produce recycled plastic compliant with Regulation 10/2011. And although there are different articles for both, they are very similar in terms of what needs to be there. Basically, in general, there needs to be a characterization of the novel technology. There needs to be an explanation of any deviations from Article 6, 7, or 8. And then also extensive reasoning on the safety of the technology. So this means the contaminant levels of the plastic input and recycled plastic, and also where they come from, so a root cause analysis, microbiological safety, a decontamination efficiency, which basically states the removal efficiency of the contaminants from the plastic input to the recycled plastic through this decontamination technology. And then also data on migration into food, which means that when you have your recycled plastic, you will present evidence of how much of the contaminants still present in the recycled plastic can migrate into food and at what levels are they still safe. Now, this is important also for the STOPP project, just to make a bridge here, because one of the tasks of the project is the recycling of polyolefin-based food packaging waste back into food contact. So our idea is having in mind all these safety requirements that I just mentioned. We prove and we do all this data generation and we try to see, okay, can this material be used back into food contact? We are focusing on PP material. So different collection, sorting, pre-processing systems will be analyzed. And we're also focusing on mechanical PP recycling. Then we do an analysis of substance present, so non-intentionally added substances, target volatiles, and also migration modeling. So all this data that I mentioned in the previous slide, we are also doing that in the project. Now that we covered this part, let's dive deeper into the traceability requirements, which focus on these non-bold requirements I just mentioned previously. So as you see, we have already talked about the fact that the collection and pre-processing need to be certified. And then now we're going to go deeper in the compliance monitoring summary sheet and the declaration of compliance for both recyclers and converters. So one of the things that need to be in this document is numbers associated with the recycler and installation. So basically, first you will need to register the company, the plant, the lines, and also what type of recycling technology you have. So here you will see we have first a recycling operator number. So this is the company. And the company has, for example, on the left side, it has 3 different plants. So these are recycling facility numbers that you can obtain for those. Then you also see a recycling installation number. So this refers to lines. And within the lines, you can be running a suitable technology with an individual authorization number that will have a RAN. You could be running a recycling scheme, which will have a recycling scheme number, or also a novel technology number, which will have a novel technology number. An important part here is that you see, for example, on the left side, on line 1 and 2, they have the same RAN number. So this is what I previously mentioned, that you can have the same RAN for if they are run the same way for a suitable technology. So to do this, registration is done through a union register. where you can register all the things I just mentioned. And then this, for example, will also be used in the declaration of compliance. So there's two declaration of compliance. You have one for recyclers and one for converters. Both have templates within the regulation. Declaration of compliance for recyclers contains instructions for the converters and is completed per batch of recycled plastic as soon as the decontamination installation has started. Then the converter will post-process according to this DOC and also provide subsequent converters and users the declaration of compliance for converters. Finally, the compliance monitoring summary sheet. There's also a template in the regulation, and basically it identifies the recycler and the installation, identifies the operation of the recycling installation, quality assessment steps, and also record repository. So this is what is going to be audited also by the competent authority. So the recycler will submit it within 1 month after start of production, and then the competent authority will audit it within a year. Now, for the last part, we are going to talk a little bit about the current challenges and opportunities. So, the current big opportunity is set in the packaging and packaging waste regulation, which sets minimum recycled content targets. So, you see here, these are the relevant targets for food context. So, you have targets for PET contact sensitive packaging, you have targets for other contact sensitive packaging, and also for single use plastic beverage bottles. You have targets for 2030 and 2040. Now, this is a great incentive, but at the same time, there are some challenges. So first, we need to ensure that there are safe recyclers across the value chain. So we definitely need to have better collection systems and sorting practices in place. But at the same time, the value chain, if you go up the value chain, it's also important that packaging and substances are designed for recycling, so they can withstand the recycling process. Furthermore, currently we only have from EFSA guidance for PET mechanical recycling, so it will be very relevant to extend for other polymers and recycling processes. But it's also important within the industry, and that's why the STOPP project and other projects are very important to do this data generation to really advance knowledge on these other polymers and processes. So also on the policy side, so this was more on the practical side, but also on the policy side, there needs to be an optimization on the implementation of the regulation, which is actually currently being done. There are amendments that are upcoming to address some issues at policy level. Because, for example, in the registration system that I explained, we still need to have novel technology numbers. And sometimes the installations are registered without compliance checks, because currently, if you go to the registration system, you will see the numbers, but you won't see what is the status of the installation. Has it been audited successfully? Is it suspended? Is it running? So these type of checks are important. And also increase enforcement of the traceability requirements. And finally, you also see in terms of the novel technology, something very new for everyone. So sometimes there are slight differences in the interpretations of the regulation between member states. So sometimes this can pose a risk also for novel technology development. So we must all collaborate together and make sure that this is done in a uniformized manner. So that's a bit of a nutshell. I don't know if you have any questions, but that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. Well, I have received in private a few questions, so I will read it to you. So
Yeah.
the first one is, what are the approval requirements and timelines for novel recycling technologies under the regulation?
hmm So maybe I'll go to the beginning, which I think this. hopefully answers the question. So the timelines for approval, this is a bit what is the scheme for approval. So you do the notification, then you have those 2 years where you need to generate all this data. Maybe I can also give a little bit of more context that I think is relevant. So once you do the notification, after these 6 months, if the competent authority says, hey, it's good to go, you can actually start producing to be placed on a market at this stage, even though EFSA has not evaluated the safety of the technology. When it comes to the EFSA approval, then after these 2 years, you say, okay, I have submitted the 4 reports, I've done the data generation, I want my technology to be assessed. And here is this ping pong I was kind of describing between the commission and EFSA and the recycler, where they will say, okay, we need to delay because of some particular reason, or we need more information from you. So then this can be extended. That's why we say 2 to 7 years, because this can be extended quite a lot, although we would also prefer that it would be a fast tracked. So then after these 7 years, then your technology will hopefully receive the approval, and then you are considered a suitable technology.
Nice. So another question is, what documentation must be kept and for how long?
Yes, good question. So this is let me go here. So that will be said also in the record repository. I don't have the exact number in mind, but there is a clear year on the regulation. I'm not sure it was 2 or 5 years that needs to be kept. So I will need to double check that. You can always send me an email as well, so I can really say the exact number because I don't want to be mistaken on that. But so those documentation will be relative to the quality assessment steps, the SOPs, declaration of compliance, so all these things that are stated in this compliance monitoring summary sheet.
Okay, so the next question is, do we need EFSA authorization for our recycling process?
EFSA, then that's for me. If you need EFSA approval for a recycling process, that was the question.
Yes, authorization for our recycling process. Yes.
Yes. So indeed, if it is for food contact, then you go through this regulation, and then you would need this EFSA approval. Then you would see it depends if you are a PET recycler, which is the most common, and if you're using this mechanical PET recycling, you can check if the machine manufacturer of the decontamination unit, if he already has this authorized process, so he can sub-license this authorization to you, and then it's much simpler. But if you are doing a suitable novel technology, then you for sure need to go through all this process I just mentioned to obtain the approval.
Great. And the last question is, how will audits and controls be carried out in practice?
Mhm. Yes. So basically, what is stated in the regulation is that the audits are done within a year. So the competent authority will check the CMSS within a year. There's also difference about where you are. If you are from the EU, then you'll have a competent authority for sure. If you are outside of the EU, then you need to check if you have a competent authority within the list of recognized competent authorities that the EU recognizes. Otherwise, you should contact the Commission directly to ask for this. So that's the idea, is that they assess this and then they will check if you are compliant. And the idea is that this will be in the registration system that I just mentioned, but currently this is still being updated through the next amendment, so this will take some time. But the usual timeline is this: within a year, they will check the compliance monitoring summary sheet and check that your installation is running accordingly, you are fulfilling your obligations, the installation is fulfilling the obligations.
Great. And we have a few more questions entering to the chat. So the first one is, I have understood that chemical recycling, example using pyrolysis route produces by definition food grade plastic. Is it so?
So yeah, chemical recycling it's actually a very good question because this is a particularity for chemical recycling because not all processes of chemical recycling need to go through this regulation. So if you are producing a substance, a monomer that fits the high degree purity of the 10-20-11, so this is for the plastics regulation, then you don't need to go through the 22-16-16. If you don't comply with this high degree of purity, then you need to go through this 22-16-16. And since it's not a suitable technology, then it will be considered a novel technology and you will need to go through that route.
Great. And the last one we have received is some prospective questions. So I think I can go one by one. How does this regulation fit with the end of waste requirements for plastic? And if they are comparable, does it impact on the status of the substance as recyclate?
You'll go one for one. I thought you were going to say all. So indeed, so in terms of this is actually quite important because the amendments will also align with this end of waste criteria that is just being finalized for plastics. So currently, we don't have a harmonized end of waste requirement in the EU. This is happening. But the idea is that the recycled plastic is a product. Now, in terms of the flakes, most of the time it is already considered also a product for PT flakes. But we are waiting for this harmonization to make sure that this is the case. So for transportation and import, especially, this is very important. But as I mentioned, the regulation is the interface between the two. So when you come really from up the chain from the plastic waste to make sure that the quality is sufficiently good enough to provide the recyclage, which is the product.
Great. And in the same, the second part of the question was also the DPP discussions on plastic will be certainly impacting on EFSA and the whole value chain. Any insights on such interactions?
Could you explain what TPP means?
Yeah, so maybe the um, person who did the question, if you can, digital product passport.
Yes. So I'm focusing really on this regulation, so I'm not really familiar what's happening with the digital product passport. But again, you can also send this question. I can direct to the colleague who's working on these regulations.
Great. I think there are no more questions. So I have served through the chat the next webinar that we are going to organize in the framework of challenges and opportunities on food packaging recycling. This will be um, given by our project coordinator, BTT, and there you can find all the information and the registration link. Again, if you have more questions for Alexandra or if you want to know a little bit more, I will paste you in a moment the official email of the project where you can write or enter your question and I can recirculate it to Alexandra in case you have future or upcoming questions or comments. Having said this, from my side, it's been a pleasure to listen to you, Alexandra. So thank you so much for this valuable presentation and very interesting. Hope to see you in upcoming activities. And for the rest of the people, as you know, this presentation will be shared on the Stop website in case you want to rewatch it again. And we encourage you to register for the next webinars because we are supposed to organize one webinar per month. So the second one will be on March, as I said, and the third one will be organized probably, we are still finalizing some organizational details, but it will be probably in early April. So that's all from my side, Alexandra. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for the questions. And yeah, if you have something that can help extra, please feel free to contact us and we will try to help you.
Yes, actually, if you give me just one moment, I can look for you the exact email because I don't want to make a mistake.
I,
So here in the on our website you have a form where you can contact us. So in the Stop Project website, you have the contact tab where you can enter there a simple form and enter your our question. So still, again, thank you so much, Alexandra. Thank you to all the people who attend today's webinar, and we keep in touch, and we hope to see you in our upcoming webinar. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.